Somewhere right now, a kid is squinting up at the sky, annoyed that the Sunday is in their eyes. Somewhere else, someone is driving home with the windows down, feeling that particular warmth on their forearm that only direct sunlight gives you. Neither of them knows they're looking at a lie knot, a malicious one, just an old one. Because everything reaching you right now, the warmth on your skin, the glare off a windshield, the light your eyes are using to read this sentence. Left the Sunday 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago. It has been traveling toward you this entire time, carrying information about a star you are quietly trusting to still be exactly where you left it. You have never once seen the Sunday as it exists in this exact moment. Nobody has been, not ever, in the entire history of our species. Hold that thought for a second, because it is about to matter more than you think. Now here is the experiment. What if it isn't there anymore? Not a slow death, not a supernova, not a dimming, not so much as a flicker of warning, just gone. Erased between one heartbeat and the next, with no flash, no sound, no signature of any kind announcing that it happened. You still wouldn't know. For 8 full minutes, you'd keep standing in daylight cast by something that no longer existed anywhere in the universe. Your shadow would still fall exactly where it always falls. The warmth on your arms would feel completely convincingly real. That kid squinting at the sky would still be squinting at a light source that had already ceased to exist. You would be living inside a message sent by a corpse. And light isn't the only thing that would keep lying to you. Gravity would too. So let's actually go there. Let's follow this collapse, minute by minute, layer by layer. Because the true shape of this disaster is stranger, slower, and far more haunting than the version you've probably already seen online. Let's start with that 8-minute gap, because once you understand it, you'll never look at sunlight the same way again. Light is fast. Roughly 186,000 miles every second. Fast enough that most people assume it is instantaneous. It isn't. Every sunrise you've ever watched had already happened. Elsewhere, 8 minutes before you saw it. You've never seen the Sunday in real time. Nobody ever has. Wait, that is not even the strange part. Gravity runs on the exact same delay, not faster, not instant. The same speed limit as light itself. Einstein's general relativity doesn't describe gravity as an invisible leash yanking planets into position. The instant something shifts, it describes gravity as a ripple moving outward through the fabric of space-time at the speed of light, obeying the same cosmic rulebook as everything else in existence. Which means if the Sunday vanished this instant, Earth wouldn't just keep receiving its light for 8 more minutes. It would keep curving through space around a star that had already ceased to exist, faithfully tracing an orbit shaped by gravity from something no longer there to generate it. For 8 minutes, Earth would be a planet in mourning that doesn't yet know it is grieving, obeying laws written by a ghost. Here is where it gets genuinely eerie. Is there any way to catch this? The instant it happens, any signal fast enough to expose the lie before the 8 minutes run out? There is, and it comes from something almost nobody has ever heard of. The neutrino. The Sunday isn't only a source of light deep in its core. Nuclear fusion is constantly forging neutrinos, ghost particles so indifferent to ordinary matter that trillions of them are passing through your body right now, and you will never feel a single one. They travel at nearly the speed of light too, crossing the same 93 million miles in the same 8 minutes. Enormous underground detectors, built in old mine shafts and buried deep beneath mountains specifically to catch these nearly invisible particles, register a small, steady trickle of solar neutrinos every single day, quiet proof that somewhere above us, fusion is still happening. If the Sunday genuinely disappeared, that trickle wouldn't fade out gradually. It would stop cleanly, at almost the exact same 8-minute mark as the light and the gravity. 3 completely different messengers, 3 entirely different physical processes, all arriving at the same impossible verdict in near-perfect unison, like 3 separate witnesses independently confessing to the same crime. But the moment those 8 minutes finally run out, something happens that no witness, no detector, no equation fully prepares you for. The sky doesn't dim. It doesn't fade the way a bulb fades. When you turn the dimmer switch down, it goes out all at once, mid-breath. As if someone reached up and erased daylight in the space between one heartbeat and the next. And in that same instant, Earth stops bending toward the Sunday. With no gravity left to hold the curve, the planet stops arcing around an empty point in space and instead flies off in a straight line tangent to whatever direction it happened to be moving at that exact moment. Not flung, not launched dramatically outward, released the same quiet, sudden way. A ball on a string flies straight the instant you simply let go, instead of spiraling away like you'd expect. Every other planet in the solar system does the same thing. At the same time, each one breaking off into its own straight line, the entire architecture of our solar system unraveling in absolute silence and absolute darkness within a matter of minutes. No sound because space carries none. No warning flash because vanishing produces no light of its own 8 planets. 8 separate directions. Suddenly, permanently, irreversibly alone. Except that 8 minute number was never universal. It only ever belonged to Earth. Here is the detail that changes the entire shape of this disaster. Light needs just over 4 minutes to reach Mercury. It needs more than 4 hours to reach Neptune, which means the outer solar system gets something the inner planets never had, a stay of execution. Jupiter keeps curving faithfully along its orbit for nearly 43 more minutes after Earth has already broken free. Neptune doesn't even notice for over 4 hours, drifting on in blissful, doomed ignorance while everything closer to the Sunday has already been cut loose. This isn't a single catastrophic snap. It is a chain reaction traveling outward at the speed of light itself, planet by planet, each one falling out of the story like dominoes toppling in impossibly slow motion across billions of miles of empty space. And back on the one planet that already knows, the crisis stops being about physics and starts being about power. Thousands of satellites are quietly dying right now in this scenario, and almost nobody down here has noticed yet. Somewhere, a pilot mid-flight glances at a GPS display that is about to start lying to them too. Most of the GPS network, global communications, the International Space Station itself. All of it runs on solar panels. The instant sunlight stops arriving, those panels go dark, and onboard batteries engineered for brief eclipses lasting minutes begin bleeding out within hours. Nothing was ever built for a night with no morning. Waiting on the other side of it, GPS fails. Weather forecasting fails. Satellite internet fails. All of it collapsing in a staggered blackout as reserves run dry across an entire orbital network. At almost the same moment, farms on the ground are quietly losing their growing season forever. And just before true darkness settles in for good, the sky performs one final ghostly trick. Something almost nobody would think to look for. The last visible trace the Sunday ever leaves behind isn't light. It is wind. The solar wind, a constant stream of charged particles the Sunday hurls outward in every direction, and unlike light, it doesn't travel at some impossible speed. It travels slowly enough to actually notice, taking anywhere from 1 to 4 days to cross the same distance light crosses in 8 minutes, which means for hours after the sky has already gone completely black. Particles already mid-flight keep arriving anyway, still slamming into Earth's magnetic shield, still occasionally sparking faint, otherworldly auroras above the poles. The very last physical proof that a star ever burned there at all. Then, over the following days, even that fades into nothing, as the final particle finally lands and nothing follows behind it. The Sunday doesn't die all at once. It dies in layers, light first, gravity riding beside it. Then a slow, dwindling trickle of particles running dry days later, the last exhaust from an engine that stopped running minutes ago. And high above your head, one more invisible system is already failing in perfect sync. The ionosphere, a layer of charged particles in Earth's upper atmosphere, exists only because it is constantly bombarded by solar ultraviolet radiation. Cut off that supply, and the electrons up there start recombining within hours. The layer thins, it decays. That same layer is exactly what long-distance shortwave radio bounces off to curve messages around the planet's curve, which means the emergency communication backbone that ships, aircraft, and disaster response still quietly rely on begins degrading the same day the lights go out for good. Satellites failing, radio failing, the atmosphere itself quietly unraveling, all of it collapsing in near-perfect rhythm with the visible world outside your window going dark forever. But even that darkness isn't what you probably imagine. You've likely seen the popular version of this story, The one where the sky turns instantly dramatically black, like a curtain dropped over the entire planet. That is not quite it. The sky is blue because of something called Rayleigh scattering, sunlight bouncing off gas molecules in the atmosphere, scattering shorter blue wavelengths in every direction, painting a color you've spent your entire life never once questioning. Nitrogen makes up nearly 30% of the atmosphere, oxygen about 80%, and both take part in that scattering, just in slightly different ways, depending on how each molecule interacts with incoming light. But scattering needs something to scatter. Remove the sun and you don't just dim the source, you erase it entirely. There is no daylight left anywhere for the atmosphere to bend or color or soften, so the sky doesn't fade toward a duller blue. It goes fully, completely black, the stars burning overhead without a single photon of daylight left on Earth to compete with them. Here's a myth worth burying while we're here. Many versions of this story claim Earth would instantly bake under lethal ultraviolet radiation the moment the sun disappears. It wouldn't. The ozone layer, made of O-Fe molecules, already exists 30 miles above your head, built up gradually over immense stretches of time through the ozone and oxygen cycle. Erasing the sun doesn't retroactively build a shield that is already finished. It holds there is simply no sunlight left anywhere for it to need to block. On the ground, though, something else has already begun. Something you can feel. Without solar heating, Earth's surface starts radiating its stored warmth directly out into space, with nothing new arriving to replace it, like a furnace switched off with its door left wide open to the night. Climate scientists who've actually modeled this exact scenario estimate surface temperatures could fall below freezing within about a week. Something else vanishes at the exact same time, weather itself in the way you've always known it. Wind, storms, and entire jet streams exist because the equator gets more sunlight than the poles, a constant uneven heating that drives air in motion across the whole planet. Erase the sun, and that engine shuts off immediately. Within days, the temperature difference driving every breeze on Earth starts flattening out, and the sky, for a little while, would actually go still, not calm silent. The last exhale of a planet that no longer has a reason to breathe. Within a year, global averages could plunge toward -19 degrees Fahrenheit, a cold so extreme it would make Antarctica's harshest winter feel like a mild afternoon in comparison. But here is the twist almost nobody sees coming. The oceans wouldn't freeze anywhere near that fast. Dianzan water happens to be an unusually stubborn insulator against its own freezing, and that single quirk of chemistry would end up buying the planet centuries it doesn't deserve. As the surface layer froze, that ice would trap the heat sitting underneath it, sealing warmth in rather than letting it bleed away into space. A lid holding a secret hostage instead of releasing it. Researchers modeling this exact collapse estimate, it could take over 1,000 years for Earth's oceans to freeze completely solid from surface to seafloor, which means sealed beneath that slowly thickening ice, in water untouched by the collapsing world above. Something close to a sanctuary would quietly persist, brutal above, survivable below. Deep sea ecosystems clustered around hydrothermal vents, already living in permanent darkness on the ocean floor, wouldn't notice the sun was gone at all. They never needed it in the first place. Their entire food chain runs on chemical energy leaking up from inside the Earth itself, not on sunlight filtering down from somewhere above. For life that never depended on a star, this would be nothing. For almost everything else, it would be the opposite of nothing. Zan on land. The collapse moves violently, brutally faster, because nearly every surface food chain traces back to one single fragile process: photosynthesis. Plants convert sunlight into usable energy. Remove the sunlight, and that conversion doesn't slow down. It stops immediately. Mid-Zen cycle, mid-Zen cell. Most plant life begins dying within days to weeks. The most light-Zen hungry, temperature-Zen sensitive species collapsing. First, herbivores that depend on those plants starve shortly after. Predators that depend on herbivores follow the same collapsing chain not long after that. A domino run stretching from soil to apex predator in a matter of months, quiet, relentless, and almost entirely invisible until it is already finished. The most surprising casualty isn't even a large animal. Honeybees navigate using the sunday itself as a compass, encoding its exact position into the famous waggle dance that tells the rest of the hive where food is. Erase the sunday, and that entire language collapses instantly. Bees that survive the cold would still be able to fly. They'd simply have no way left to tell each other where anything is. Except one part of the plant kingdom refuses to play by those rules at all. A seed. A dormant seed doesn't need sunlight to survive, only to wake up. Buried in soil or deliberately sealed inside vaults like the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, seeds could sit chemically paused for years, even decades, waiting patiently for a sunrise that would never actually return. Not alive, not quite dead either. Just waiting indefinitely in the dark for a signal that isn't coming. Humans for a while would occupy an unusually strange position in all of this, better equipped to survive the immediate crisis than almost any other species on Earth. Not because of biology, because of engineering. Stored food. Greenhouses lit by artificial grow lights. Nuclear power plants and geothermal energy, both entirely indifferent to whether a star 93 million miles away happens to exist. There is already a real working proof of concept for this exact kind of survival, and it has been quietly cruising beneath the ocean's surface for decades: the nuclear submarine. Modern nuclear submarines can stay fully submerged completely without sunlight for months at a stretch, generating their own electricity from onboard reactors and even manufacturing breathable oxygen directly from seawater through electrolysis. The crew never sees daylight, never needs it, for the entire deployment. It is proof that a sunless, self-contained human habitat isn't science fiction. It already exists, just underwater, just temporarily. Scale that same principle up: nuclear power, artificial light, sealed food production, and you get a genuine blueprint for how a fraction of humanity might survive the years immediately following a vanished Sunday. The real limiting factor was never going to be heat or even light. It would be food chains built entirely around a growing season that had just permanently, irreversibly ended. But something else would be quietly failing first, long before hunger ever became the emergency. Something inside you. Somewhere, a mother is rocking a newborn to sleep by the light of a bedside lamp, unaware that the very idea of bedtime was quietly built by a Sunday that just stopped existing. Human circadian rhythm runs on light, hitting specialized cells in the retina, cells that tell the brain when to release melatonin and when to suppress it, when it is day and when it is time to rest. Erase the Sunday and that signal doesn't dim, it vanishes completely, leaving your internal clock with absolutely nothing left to synchronize against. Researchers who've studied people enduring genuinely prolonged darkness, including polar expedition teams surviving months of unbroken polar night, consistently find sleep cycles drifting, stretching, and eventually collapsing away from any 24-hour rhythm at all. Now pair that with a sky that will never lighten into dawn again. The psychological toll would arrive weeks before the physical one did. Disorientation spreading quietly through a population that isn't even close to starving yet, unraveling from the inside while the crisis outside is still gathering strength. One more casualty is waiting in the wings, and it has nothing to do with heat or food or sleep: the tides. Ocean tides run mostly on the moon's gravity, but the Sunday contributes a real measurable share, roughly a third of the total pull. The exact difference between the dramatic spring tides and the gentler neap tides that cycle through every single month of your life without you ever noticing the mechanism behind them. Erase the Sunday's gravity and the tides don't disappear. The moon is still there, at least for that 8-minute, delayed instant before Earth breaks away into its own straight line through the dark. But that specific rhythm, the monthly back and forth between stronger and weaker pulls, disappears along with the Sunday's contribution, leaving something flatter, quieter, more uniform behind. For however long Earth and Moon manage to stay bound to each other in the emptiness that follows. Even hurtling through interstellar space with no star left to orbit, the ocean keeps moving, keeps answering to gravity, just with half of its usual duet permanently missing. The Sunday was never only giving Earth light and warmth. It was quietly conducting the rhythm of every single ocean on the planet, in a way almost nobody alive has ever stopped long enough to notice. Here's the part almost nobody predicts correctly. Somewhere beneath your feet, right now, nothing would be different at all. Volcanoes would keep erupting. Earthquakes would keep happening, on the exact same schedule they always have. Both are powered by heat from Earth's own interior, radioactive decay, and residual heat from the planet's formation. a furnace with no wiring back to the Sunday whatsoever. The ground doesn't care what is happening in the sky. Zoom out far enough, though, and this story doesn't actually end with frozen oceans. A planet with no star to orbit has a name, a rogue planet drifting alone through interstellar space, untethered, unlit, unaccounted for. Astronomers believe there may be billions of them scattered across our galaxy alone, the leftover wreckage of other solar systems that suffered some version of exactly this long before humans existed to wonder about it. Earth's surface would keep cooling for thousands of years, eventually approaching the background temperature of space itself, just a few degrees above absolute zero. A cold with no honest comparison anywhere in human experience. But deep beneath that frozen shell, something might persist far longer than anyone standing on the surface could ever guess. Earth's core generates its own heat, completely independent of the Sunday, through the slow radioactive decay of elements, like uranium and thorium, a process utterly indifferent to whether a star exists anywhere nearby at all. Some astrobiologists studying rogue planets propose that heat alone could sustain a liquid ocean deep underground, sealed beneath miles of ice for billions of years after the surface had frozen solid and the Sunday itself had become nothing but a memory encoded in old cooling starlight. If life ever found a way to survive down there in absolute darkness, running on internal heat instead of borrowed sunlight, it wouldn't be waiting for a sunrise. It would have already forgotten the Sunday ever existed. It might never have known a Sunday could exist at all. There is one last vantage point worth standing in. It belongs to the only human-made objects far enough away to genuinely stretch this thought experiment to its absolute limit. The Voyager probes launched in 1977, still drifting, right now, through interstellar space, billions of miles past Neptune, carrying golden records of who we were in case anyone out there ever finds them. Light from the Sunday takes more than 20 hours to reach Voyager 1 at its current distance. Which means if the Sunday vanished this very second, Voyager would keep transmitting data shaped by a Sunday that had already been gone for the better part of a day, the single longest delayed eyewitness this event would ever have. By the time that silence, an absence where a signal used to be, finally caught up with it, every planet in the solar system would already have been drifting through total darkness for hours even. Humanity's furthest reach into the void couldn't outrun this particular delay. So here is where this thought experiment actually lands. And it isn't where the thumbnail-friendly version usually leaves you, not instant darkness, 8 full minutes of ordinary daylight, followed by an ending. So abrupt it would feel like the universe simply forgot to warn you, not instant freezing. A slow, patient unraveling, days for the air to turn brutal, about a week for the ground to begin freezing. Over 1,000 years for the deep ocean to finally fully surrender, not universal extinction, either. A strange split fate surface life collapsing within months, while deep-sea ecosystems around hydrothermal vents carry on entirely undisturbed, having never once needed a star to begin with. And underneath all of it sits one quietly unbearable fact. For 8 minutes in this scenario, you would be standing in sunlight from a Sunday that no longer existed, held in orbit by gravity from a Sunday that no longer existed, living entirely inside a message that was already expiring the moment it reached you. We like to think of the Sunday as something happening right now overhead, in real time, a constant. A given, the one thing in the sky we never had to question. It never was. Every warm afternoon you have ever felt was already 8 minutes old by the time it touched your skin. Every sunset you've ever called beautiful had already finished happening before you knew to look up. The kid squinting at the sky, the driver with the windows down, the mother rocking her newborn under a lamp, built on borrowed daylight. None of them were ever standing under the Sunday itself. They were standing in its memory. The Sunday was never a presence. It was always a signal, still arriving, still warming your shoulders right now, from a place and a moment that statistically, astronomically, almost certainly still exists. But you will never actually know that in real time. You only ever get to trust the light. And somehow, every single day of your life, without knowing it, without needing to be told, you already have. Go outside tonight once it is fully dark and look up anyway. Every star up there is doing the exact same thing the Sunday does. Just louder, just further away, just old enough that some of what you are looking at may not even be there anymore either. You were never looking at the universe as it is. You were only ever looking at the last thing it managed to tell you.